Hey guys, another video for our crime and emergency services in Japan playlist. We were sent an article from the Western media. Someone sent us an article they'd seen in the Western media this week and said, what do you think of this, or what's going on with this? It was an app, it was a phone app, and the idea of it was if someone was being molested, they could push a button and it would scream really loudly, stop molesting me, something like that. Or it had another mode where you could push a button and it would display silently on the screen, help me, I'm being molested, right? Stories like this get picked up obviously by the Western media, and you're going to see a lot more of them over the next 12 months as the Olympics get closer, of course. And once the media are actually full on here for the Olympics, this is going to be the end of most news stories every night, isn't it? And just before we go, a quick strange one from Japan. Another quick strange story from Japan. So, where to start? This is huge, this thing. From a social point of view, there's a whole heap of things here that are really typical of Japanese society. So, just to put it in perspective, first of all, it said the app's been downloaded 270,000 times. Now, there's 127 million people in Japan, so these things always, when they get picked up by Western media, the way they wrote it was that this is now a thing in Japan, you know, and they do that all the time. They'll pick up on things that aren't really a thing in Japan, but because they've heard it's in Japan, they sort of make it sound like it's common. You know, 270,000 downloads, 127 million people. Yeah, it's not really a thing in Japan, but let's talk about it anyway. We'll start with the reasons for why this is an issue in the first place. There's a few things that contribute to the girls being touched on the train. One is, there's a lot of them. One is the close proximity on busy trains. Everybody's sort of jammed in together and pushing up against each other, and not always either, by the way. Again, this is something the media always show, is the people in Japan being jammed into trains. It does exist, of course, but it's not everywhere. You know, it's just something that exists peak hour on some lines in some busy cities. You know, it can be like that. And then what happens is you get the deviant dudes who take advantage of that to touch girls that are close to them on the train. And then the problem with that is, well, the next problem is that Japanese society, the old guys, we've talked about a lot of these things you recognise from previous videos. The old guys here don't get told, or guys in general, don't get told to bugger off, or to fuck off, or to whatever else that might be told in other countries when they behave badly. There's the whole social structure here where, you know, usually the place is run by men, so men are sort of dominant. Not always either, by the way. I mean, this is all generalisations, as any observations about a society have to be. We have to generalise because it's the only way to talk about it. So, you know, the place is still dominated by men. That's common knowledge. The other thing is there's an age thing here as well, that younger people always have to sort of be subservient to older people. So that sets it up then, doesn't it? It sets up bullying and all those sorts of things as well. But when it comes to sexual harassment or to sexual assault, this is a big issue, because it means that, you know, a girl being touched by a guy is going to feel at a disadvantage. And we've seen this, we've talked about this before, you know, office parties where the old boss is chasing the young girl around the table and she's going ha ha ha, and all the other staff are laughing and she's hating it, but she doesn't want to make a scene. And, you know, we talked about this before, and this is one of the keys, is that the girls feel intimidated by guys in general, and then older guys even more so, and then they don't want to make a scene. So it actually said in that article that the police said that there was, you know, 900 cases of you know, ladies being molested on trains, you know, or being molested on trains last year, but they know that it's massively underreported because the girls don't want to report it, and there's a whole heap of reasons. We've talked about this before. There's a whole heap of reasons for that. They don't want to make a scene. Often they're not exactly sure who did it because they just feel a hand in amongst the crowd of people. They're intimidated. Often they're intimidated by the guys that are doing it. They don't want to make a scene and they don't want to have any problems, and they're embarrassed, and there's a whole heap of social reasons why the girls don't want to say anything or do anything, which sort of, going back to that app again, which is sort of why it's not really going to work. You know, the idea is that, you know, they're standing there and the guy's touching them, and so they get their phone out, if it's not out already, they get their phone out and they push a button, and the phone says, "Stop touching me, stop molesting me," or "Help, I'm being molested," depending on which button they push. Or that they push the silent option and it comes up on the screen, "Please help me, I'm being molested," and they show it to somebody standing next to them, right? Which, those of you who have travelled on Japanese trains are usually really, really quiet. Everyone's just standing around being a phone zombie and stroking their phones. And if you were to do that, or if you were just to say, "Hey, stop touching me," everyone in the carriage would look at you. Everybody. So it's not hard to get attention. It's not like it's really busy and noisy and no one's going to notice. If you stand on a train, in a train carriage in Japan, and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" in a normal voice, everyone's going to look. If you say "Stop touching me" on a train in Japan, everyone's going to look at you. So getting attention isn't the problem. And obviously a girl who's intimidated, or a lady who's intimidated so much that they won't speak in that circumstance, is not likely to push a button that does the same thing anyway, are they? And this is, again, we made a video previously and we talked about how, in response to social weaknesses or human weaknesses in Japan, they often go trying to find a technology to fill it in, or some sort of backdoor way of solving it, you know. And it's the same, the language thing. The language skills in Japan are famously low and weak, and instead of doing something about that and improving the education system, you know, a company starts, you know, the drive to try and sell translating apps is really huge, and they don't work. You know, they don't work, and that's not a way. That's not the way that humans communicate anyway, is it? I mean, humans all around the world are communicating directly with each other using language, you know, and the Japanese are trying to find a way to do it using apps so they don't have to learn the language, they don't have to communicate, and it's another extension of that, you know. So instead of dealing with the actual problems that are causing this to happen, you know, I mean, prosecuting some of these guys in high profile in the media, and, like, you know, having them in the media and prosecuting them and giving them big punishments would be a good start. And then a big campaign to say, you know, that molesting people is not good, and that if you see someone being molested, you should say something, and if you're being molested, you should say something, and it's not a bad thing if you say something, that other people can come to your aid. And, you know, a bit of a campaign to bring the, you know, this aspect of Japanese life into the 21st century would be good. Because it's really, again, we talked about this before, quite often Japanese society things are a little bit like from the 1950s, from other countries in the 1950s, you know, and it's a bit like that. And so there's solutions to it, of course, that need to be done, but, you know, these companies get on with their apps and stuff, and then people pick up on it, and the media pick up on it, and it's just novelties. Most of these things that these companies do like that are just to draw attention to themselves. They're marketing things, aren't they? To draw attention to themselves, get some apps, get some customers that they then sell some other stuff to, probably. But you know, it's not going to work. Obviously, it's not going to work. The ladies that are too embarrassed to say with their own voice, "Stop touching me," are not likely to push a button that then does exactly the same thing, are they? Suddenly out of their phone comes loudly, and it says it's really loud too, comes out really loudly, "Stop touching me," you know, which is a great idea, but the lady that's too shy to say it with her own voice is not likely to push the button and have the phone do it, is she? You know, and the same with the showing it. If she's not going to sort of wave to the person next to her and point at the Devo, it makes it not likely that she's going to show them her phone with it written on, is there? You know, it's another one of these. It's another one of these. It's the companies trying to make money and get some new customers they can sell some other stuff to, and it's the media picking up on these things and and reporting it like it's mainstream or like it's the normal thing in Japan. And you're going to be seeing a lot more of that, over the next 12 months. You just watch how much nonsense gets reported from Japan, and the words that they always use. They don't say there's this thing. They always say this is the latest from Japan. This is the latest trend from Japan. It's the latest craze from Japan, or it's the latest. This is what they're doing in Japan now to make it sound like it's mainstream, and it's just not. It's just not. We hadn't actually seen it. It's probably been in the Japanese media, but we didn't see it. Nobody we know's mentioned it, and the first we see it's from the Western media, and of course once one Western media outlet picks up on it, then others will pick up on it too, and it'll get more widely reported, and the more it gets reported, the more they make it sound like it's mainstream and it's popular, and it's if it was going to work, if it was actually going to keep some ladies safe, then obviously it'd be a great thing, but from a logical point of view, looking at it logically, it's not solving the problem, is it? And the people that are too shy and uncomfortable and embarrassed to say something with their own voice are not going to push the button and make their phone say it really loudly, and they're not going to show it to the person next to them for the same reason. So, and this is a social thing that just needs to be addressed more. The other thing is too that these things get addressed a lot as well. The way it gets written up in the media is that a lady can't go on a train in Japan without getting molested, and of course that's not true either. That's not true either. I mean, there's deviants around, of course, but it's not like a lady can't go on a train without getting molested, or And of course, there's a lot of strong ladies in Japan too, who if a guy did touch her and say, hey, don't touch me, and that'd be the end of it, wouldn't it? Which is what needs to be encouraged, and that's what we'd be telling the young girls in our family in Japan, that anybody touches you here, that you don't want to touch you, tell them loudly, don't touch me, and that'll be the end of it. And it would be. These guys aren't attacking them. These guys are just, they're just weirdos that are quietly groping them, and any sort of attention that would be brought to them would be an end to it anyway. So yeah, there's that app, and and there's no doubt there's people uploading it to look at it, downloading it to look at it. But as to anybody using it, there was nothing in that report of anyone actually using it, and that'd be the thing, wouldn't it? If it was actually getting used and it was actually stopping people getting attacked or molested, then that'd be a good thing. But they talked to the police about it. The police went, yes, isn't it wonderful? But there was no talk of anybody actually using it to protect themselves. So it's just another one of those things that we just have to wait for it to evolve. There's not much you can do about stuff like this in Japan, except for your own family and friends, that talk to our own family and friends, and the girls, the Japanese girls in our family, we tell them, if anybody touches you, you don't want to touch you, tell them, don't touch me. And because that's one thing about these guys, they're weak little losers, sort of quietly touching people on the train. You draw attention to them, hey, or tell, talk loudly, stop touching me. Other people will look too, and they can be arrested for it. It's an offence they can be jailed for. It comes with big fines and jail sentences if they do it. So they can report it to the police, tell the station, the train staff, and the police, and have them arrested. So it can be done. But that's not the problem. The problem is the social structure and the way it works, that these weird dudes, are in this position where they can do these things to these girls or ladies, and these girls and ladies aren't sort of strong enough, or don't feel strong enough to do something about it, So anyway, there it was. More videos coming soon.